and we appreciate it. We've reviewed some of that material, and you've given us a lot of material that we didn't get from Director Wray. That specific question, I think, is important to the American people. Were people who were confidential human sources of the FBI who broke the law, one was recommended for prosecution, my understanding is, by the information we've received from you, were they actually paid by the very taxpayers who may have got charged with the same offense? I think that's important for us to understand.
I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Director Patel. I want to focus a little bit on domestic terrorism. We have a graph here, data up to 2021, but as you can tell, domestic terrorism is on the rise. Nation, our citizens under threat. We saw the assassination of Charlie Kirk, 2 assassination attempts on the president, school shooting, Minnesota last month, and closer to home, just a couple of days ago, Huntington Beach, peaceful vigil for Charlie Clark, infiltrated by neo-Nazis who essentially made the local individuals attending that event fear for their safety. All of us know that a lot of these domestic attacks are by lone wolves, but yet they do leave clues, social media or elsewhere. Director Patel, you're it. You're the thin blue line. The FBI, your job to protect our citizens back home from those that would harm us. You have to find the needle in the haystack. Takes a lot of work, a lot of resources. Talking to my local sheriff this morning, who said they're concerned. Federal cuts to local grants that help them do the job. Then, of course, let's not forget about other threats that are coming before us, like high-tech fraud. Local senior recently was talking to me about a text she had gotten, a demand by the IRS to send a payment immediately, or the IRS agents were on their way to arrest this individual. Pretty gutsy stuff by folks probably from Europe, North Korea, Russia, China, people, okay, going after those precious savings our senior citizens rely on. Yet the president's proposing a budget cut of $500 million or more to your organization, the FBI. You've said that that'll essentially equate to about 1,300 less jobs at the FBI. So I'm going to ask you essentially, what is it that we can do to help you do your job? Little concerned. Friday night lights. One of the events I love to do on Friday nights, go to the local high school football game. Sit there at the stadium and you always say, what if? What if? You're the thin blue line. Can you do your job cutting $500 million from your budget?
Thank you, sir. I think we are doing our job, and the distinction is with the budget that we have, we are flexing more resources to the field. California is receiving the largest FBI plus-up of any state in the union due to that plus-up. They're not getting a reduction. No state is getting a reduction. Every state is getting a plus-up. And so I'm utilizing the money that we have to first plus it up. And the empty vacancies that we have, those haven't been filled in years, not under my leadership.
Here's my concern. You're going to do well. You're doing more with less, is what you're saying. Yet we're about to vote on a budget that has $88 million more to protect members of Congress, the executive branch, and the Supreme Court. There's a contradiction here. Back on Main Street, we're saying you can do more with less, you can protect them with less money, yet here in Washington, we're saying we need more money to protect members of Congress. It's a little contradiction here, or maybe, sir, you ought to talk to leadership about coming in with your management style to protect the Supreme Court, Congress, and the administration. Otherwise, it's essentially a hypocritical situation. We need more protection, yet folks on Main Street can do with less.
My concern is folks on Main Street. We also were I think we received over $300 million in the big, beautiful bill, and we're also receiving pots of money from our interagency. So this sort of $500 million cut isn't entirely accurate.
You're still getting cut $200 million plus. You're still moving your agents to do ICE work. So you are leaving a lot of bases uncovered. And I'm not going to be argumentative with you, Director Patel. I'm just saying, if that thin blue line does not hold, people on Main Street will pay the price.
I agree with you, sir.
And I just look forward to working with you, because I am very concerned that these kinds of budget cuts are short-sighted, especially when my local sheriff calls me and says, we need more support, and we're looking at budget cuts.
I'll work with you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield time.
Mr. Chairman, I have another unanimous consent
The
request.
gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized for unanimous consent.
I seek to introduce a December 2024 OIG report from the Department of Justice, which confirms the conclusion of the Bill Barr Justice Department that the so-called whistleblower, a disgruntled former employee of the Intelligence Committee, was not a credible witness, and there were no further actions taken.
Without objection.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to submit some items for the record.
You bet. Gentleman from California.
First one, Trump's deportation diverts FBI agents off child predator cases. Second one, FBI director backtracks on administration's proposed budget cuts. And number three, Trump administration says 70% of ICE detainees do not have criminal convictions.
Without objection. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you. Director, earlier this year, the committee learned of new documents tied to the Crossfire Hurricane investigation and the Russia collusion hoax against President Trump. Your efforts in declassifying key documents tied to this investigation allowed the committee to acquire thousands of pages that it did not have previously. Did any of your predecessors make any effort to declassify these documents?
Not to the extent we have.
Did any of your predecessors share or leak any details that were classified at the time?
There are ongoing leak investigations across the board at the Bureau related to this.
I believe one of those is Mr. Comey, and I thank you for continuing that investigation. Among the declassified documents are the Durham Report Annex, the Crossfire Binder, and the Nellie Orr Criminal Referral. Could you summarize for those watching what we know about the Russia collusion hoax so far?
Well, sir, I think the record will speak that the Russia collusion matter was perpetrated by a political party to go overseas and obtain information from a foreign intelligence asset, only to have that information, which was demonstrably false, turned over to the FBI, who walked into a federal FISA secret court and asked for a secret surveillance court order and lied to the federal court, and we know that because someone was convicted of it, and only to surveil the political opponent. So that is a massive scandal. We helped expose it. And in terms of the pages of productions, I provided 1,400 pages of production related to Crossfire Hurricane, and my predecessors have provided 0.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your courage and commitment to declassifying these important documents for our review, and hope that you'll continue with this commitment. Can we expect to see more declassification efforts regarding the Crossfire Hurricane and Russia collusion hoax?
Yes.
Thank you. I yield the remaining balance of my time to Chairman Jordan.
Oh, I thank the gentleman for yielding. And Director, that's when it all started, right? The whole Russia, that's when it all began. And then it was Mueller, then it was impeachment, then it was Jack Smith and Fonnie Willis and Alvin Bragg and you name it. But it all started then. And that's why I think the gentleman from Texas wants to make sure we get all the information there. And I want to go back to when it was changed. We talked about this earlier. I just want to read to you what the CIA officer said to the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, quote, Brennan refused to remove the dossier, and when confronted with the dossier's main flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? So that's what he initially said. And then when he was talking to this committee, he said the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. So on one hand, you got a witness who was there who said he refused to remove it even though he knew it was garbage. And then he's, on the other hand, telling the committee, no, we didn't want anything to do with it. It shouldn't have been a part of the intelligence community assessment, which we know it was. You know it was. You found that. Those are two entirely different stories. I think Mr. Brennan has some explaining to do. frankly, what happened there. And I think you said earlier that this whole thing, and I think you said to Mr. Gooden, this whole thing is being looked at as part of this grand conspiracy to undermine the president, whether it's Comey, Brennan, Clapper, former head of the Intelligence Committee, now senator from, whoever it is, that's all being looked at. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Well, we appreciate that. And part of what's also being looked at, and I think the gentleman from Wisconsin brought this up earlier, what is a burn bag for, by the way?
Generally speaking, the intelligence community obviously utilizes and possesses classified documents, but drafts of those classified documents and even ultimate finished products of those classified documents have to be recorded and or discarded. And if they are discarded, the only way we do that, the hard copies, is we literally put them in burn bags that are identified specifically for that purpose, and there is a very exact courier system in which those burn bags are obtained and the material inside is destroyed.
So it's to get rid of the material, right?
Yes, sir.
And it looks like the annex that Mr. Durham in his investigation had was put into a burn bag by your predecessor, I assume, to be destroyed. Is that accurate?
Without getting into the stylization of the evidence, anything that's put in a burn bag is for purposes of destruction.
Do you find that interesting that the Durham annex was placed in a burn bag, that you would discover that when you took over as the head of the FBI?
We found a lot of information in a lot of burn bags.
Well, we appreciate you finding that. We'd like to know a little bit more about that, and we look forward to that information coming forward. And I appreciate the gentleman yielding. With that, we now recognize the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. I have a couple of questions regarding a terrible shooting that occurred in Colorado, a state, as you may know, that I represent. You've testified previously about, I think, what you would describe as your efforts to provide more information.
Thank you, sir. And come back to Memphis, and you work with Kevin Kane in our tourism bureau.
He's great.
Thank you. And thank you for your work in Memphis.
Gentleman, yields back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
So 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6 story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." The second document is entitled, "What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections." The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, "Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief." And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former Prime Minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel.
Without objection.
It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007, and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman
consent
yields back.
request.
Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from New York.
I ask unanimous consent to introduce an unsigned memorandum from July 7th, 2025 that says we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Gentleman from
unanimous consent request. It's a article entitled DOJ Deletes Study Showing Domestic Terrorists Are Most Often Right-Wing.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, thank you for being here today. I want to first talk about the significant role that the FBI plays in combating the national security threats posed by our nation's greatest threat, our nation's greatest security threat, China and the Chinese Communist Party. It's a fact that China is America's most significant national security threat. Isn't that correct?
I would say so, sir.
And you would agree with me that China wants to dominate the United States of America,
I think that's largely their plan.
and they want to dominate the world, both militarily and economically. Isn't that correct?
I think so.
And sir, you've been FBI director for the last, 8 months?
7 months, yes.
7 months, and during that time, have you held any stock in any companies founded in China?
I don't believe so.
Well, you do own stock in a company known as Elite Depot, don't you?
Which one, sorry?
Elite Depot. You own stock.
I think that's, I'll have to get back to you. I think it's a law firm and it's a company out of Singapore.
Okay, well, no, the company out of Singapore, which is owned by Elite Depot, is the Shein Company, which was founded in China, correct?
That company operates out of Taiwan.
Well, they changed their headquarters from China back in 2022 to Singapore for tax purposes, but it's owned by a Chinese billionaire. I think his name is Charlie Zhu, and you own stock in the company that owns Shein.
Which I disclosed during my confirmation process.
You certainly did. And now, do you still hold that stock in that Chinese company?
Pursuant to the Department of Justice, who reviewed my material that was submitted during my confirmation process, I was able to hold certain stocks, and they made the decision.
You still hold the stocks that you have? You still hold on to these Chinese stocks, these stocks in this Chinese company?
I disagree that it's a Chinese company, but I was in the DOJ, when you're appointed, makes a call on what you can and can't possess.
Well, now, let me ask you this. Chinese companies steal trademarks. They produce counterfeit products and sell them over the internet on platforms such as Shein. They steal intellectual property. They steal data from American companies. And to me, it seems inconsistent with your role as FBI director that you would own stock in a company that is based in a country that is the nation's premier national security threat. It's like you are putting your own financial security over the security of the nation.
I disagree with that characterization.
Well, I think the American people look at it like it's a classic situation of the fox guarding the hen house. If the FBI is charged with investigating espionage, economic espionage by companies controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and you are the director of the FBI, you've got a conflict of interest.
Sir, I would just show if there's any intimation that I'm against.
Why are you holding on to this stock?
It wasn't a decision I made.
And it's valued at up to $5 million as of when you last reported, correct? $5 million in stock?
No, I don't follow it.
You don't follow it, but you're still making money off of it.
I don't have any money off of anything.
Well,
what I have done...
Trump's trade policies directly impact the value of that Chinese stock. Won't you agree with that?
Which trade policy? I'm not a trade expert.
Okay, all right.
But I want to tell you this.
Crazy on me today. Let me ask you this question. Why are you hiding pedophiles? Why are you shielding pedophiles? Why are you protecting pedophiles?
That is maybe the most offensive thing you could say to me, given the numbers.
Well, you have not released
given the
Epstein
numbers
files
of pedophiles.
You are aware of the
Epstein
Epstein client list that was published in the 18,000.
Time the gentleman has expired. The gentleman yields back.
Can you answer the question?
Can I just respond?
Of course, the gentleman can answer the question.
Since I took over the FBI, there has been a 33% increase.
Sir, all of that started under Christopher
Your
Wray.
time is done, but
No, it didn't.
The witness gets to
All of
answer
that
the
started
question,
under
and
the
then we'll go to our
previous,
next.
33.
FBI director, sir, and you're coming in here trying to take credit for something that a previous director
Gentlemen,
instituted and largely brought to conclusion.
I take
I
no
think it's
credit.
been clear that
offensive.
the director
It's offensive.
has. numbers are so
incorrect
much
also.
better than the previous director.
It's
Director Patel, if you want to
I take-
answer the question.
I take no credit. The men and women of the FBI have seen a 33% increase in the number of counterintelligence arrests out of the PRC.
And so all of a sudden, with you coming in 7 months ago,
and,
Gentlemen's time has
Heaven on earth.
expired.
and on the
sir,
pedophile
American public not gonna
accusation,
go for that.
we have arrested 1,500 child predators in the last 7 months.
Under
That's
investigations
more than
initiated by
anybody
the prior
Appreciate the
directorship.
director's good work, and we really appreciate that the time of the gentleman has expired. We now go to the gentleman from Texas.
I thank the chairman. I thank the FBI director for coming before the committee. I assume the FBI director, Mr. Patel, I believe you probably agree with me that there is a significant organized effort on the left side of the political spectrum to advance criminal organizations being able to put more criminals out on the streets. And that what we've seen this in daily action. Are you familiar with the report that came out this last Monday from the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund?
I'm not familiar with that, sorry.
So this report came out this past Monday, and it said that significant amount of the money flowing out of George Soros and other leftist organizations and funders has been funding DAs and prosecutors, and quote, many of these DAs had never managed an office, prosecuted a criminal case, developed organizational policies. In dozens of America's largest cities and counties, this report finds these progressive district attorneys have outsourced core parts of the American criminal justice system to activists and political donors, taking direction and advice on everything from staffing decisions and communication strategy. Organizations, it's a complex web of donors going in through these organizations to put radical DAs and prosecutors out there, putting criminals on the streets. Does the FBI director agree that this exists and is a problem?
I will accept the factual representation, and if that exists, it is a problem.
The organizations such as TIDES, the Fair and Just Prosecution, Brenner Center for Justice, Partnership for Safety and Justice, the Vera Institute of Justice, the amount of dollars flowing from George Soros through and to these organizations and to the various prosecutors that have resulted in increased crime on our streets, including the brutal murder of the Ukrainian refugee in Charlotte. I bring that up because that is one component of the problem. In addition, we have an organized effort targeting our border. The NGOs, the nonprofits and the deep pockets, the United Nations, charitable organizations, and a long list of over 250 organizations that the Center for Immigration Studies put out that lays out a complex web of organizations that were moving people into our country, knowing that they're dangerous, knowing that they're criminal, associated with taxpayer dollars flowing through the United Nations and donor dollars flowing through organizations, including ostensibly religious ones, putting these dangerous individuals on the street that resulted in fentanyl in our communities, that resulted in the death of Jocelyn Nungare, of hundreds, thousands even, as the director testified, 100,000 people dying from these narcotics every year. All of this in an organized effort, a complete effort by the radical left to use taxpayer dollars and these dollars to put people on our streets. In addition, the extent to which we've seen now with the Southern Poverty Law Center and their hate map targeting, for example, the Family Research Council, where we had a shooting right here in DC over a decade ago, putting Charlie Kirk, putting a target on TPUSA, Antifa, other radical organizations that are very specifically organized in targeting conservatives and ordinary Americans. Well, how about the organized effort to infiltrate our schools and advance a transgender agenda and advance a radical agenda, perhaps one that we will see exposed further in the individual that actually shot Charlie Kirk. So here's my question. Will you as the director, and are you as the director, pursuing all legal channels to follow the truth wherever it may lead on this organized effort, one? And two, do you agree that Congress should take all action necessary to expose this web of dollars that are flowing to undermine our way of life? I got another minute in my time, then I'd like to hear from you on this topic broadly.
I'll keep it short. Investigatively speaking, we are doing the following. We are following the money. We are following the money in every organization and every person that is violating the federal code, and it doesn't matter what your background or ideology is, we are following the money. We are using legal process to follow that money, issuing subpoenas to follow that money, using grand juries to follow that money, and when we have results to recommend for prosecution to the Department of Justice, we will do that, and we will continue to publicize documents through Congress, yes, when we make these findings.